Tianbao Fu Yao Lu. Chapter 213. Reborn. How is the boss snake venom? Zhao Yun said. Hung Jun evenly adjusted his breath. The poison was still there, so he said, I will bleed out some blood to flush out the poison. Stay with me. He had the phoenix true essence within his body, which meant that his flesh and blood could regenerate continuously. When will we act? Asked the corpse ghost king. Yu Zayun said worriedly, it's better if we cooperate with the exorcists. Hung Jun said, this is the issue of the Yao race. We can't always rely on them. The corpse ghost king nodded and said, very well, I agree. Fox King, we'll do this on our own. Yu Zayun said, they've decided to call all members of the Yao clan to publicly denounce you on the 3rd day of March, that is, 4 days from now. Hung Jun said, then, let's set it at that time then. Qing Xiang wanted to use Hung Jun's collusion with the exorcist to publicly denounce Hung Jun and abolish his inheritance of the Yao King title and execute him. Hung Jun remembered very well that Qing Xiang said personally that Li Jinglong would step into his trap at that moment. But as long as he showed up in advance, Li Jinglong would be on guard. He said a trap was set. Hung Jun frowned, what kind of trap could it be? Suddenly, he remembered something that he had forgotten for a while, Xiaoyu. Where's Xiaoyu? Hung Jun seemed to have guessed what the trap was. Underground. Yu Zayun said, do you want to take a look at him? Hung Jun was about to nod, but the corpse ghost king said, they have eyes and ears everywhere. The entire city is filled with avian creatures. As soon as you show up, you will be discovered. You have to wait for a better opportunity. Hung Jun had no choice but to give up on meeting up with Xiaoyu for the time being. The corpse ghost king and Yu Zayun went to gather their subordinates in preparation for a decisive battle against Qing Xiang 4 days later. It was very difficult to avoid the surveillance of the birds. Hung Jun remembered that back in the Yejin palace, both Chongming and Qing Xiang had eyes and ears everywhere that looked like inescapable nets. They could use the birds to monitor the grass and trees around Taihang Mountain, and through the pond in the palace garden, they could see everything that the flying birds saw. He repeatedly reminded Yu Zayun and the corpse ghost king to be careful before the 2 Yao King left. Under the gloomy sky, the cold spring have yet to pass. In the desolate Luoyang, it was even colder. Zhao Yun lit the brazier in the house. Hong Jun sat quietly across him. Hung Jun used a sharp knife to cut open a blood vessel in his arm. The purplish-black poisoned blood flowed out endlessly, making him a little dizzy. Outside, everything was silent. Only the snow fluttered around and the clear sound of blood dripping in a copper plate, one drop after another, flowed down from Hung Jun's little finger. Drink it? Hung Jun urged. Zhao Yun said. The phoenix true essence ran in Hung Jun's blood, which could promote the regeneration of skin and flesh. At the same time, the let-out blood was also filled with the venom of the boss snake. However, Zhao Yun was not affected by this toxin. It just happened that Hung Jun needed to change the blood throughout his body, and Zhao Yun could drink this same blood to regenerate the broken flesh and tissues in his body. Zhao Yun looked at Hung Jun before drinking, and then he lowered his head at the copper plate again. Your Majesty. Zhao Yun seemed to tremble a little, and said, if I drink your blood, it's filled with my Yao essence. Hung Jun quipped. Zhao Yun never thought that one day, he would be able to drink Hung Jun's blood. In the Yao race, this act was tantamount to proclaiming a wonderful symbiosis, as if creating some kind of blood curse oath. However, for Hung Jun, this was just a lucky happenstance. He wondered if he let the corpse ghost king the blood filled with the phoenix true essence, would that regenerate his flesh as well? While at the same time, he motioned for Zhao Yun to drink while it was hot. After drinking the blood, Zhao Yun closed his eyes and began to cultivate. Afterwards, Hung Jun frowned slightly and asked, is it working? Zhao Yun hurriedly replied, of course it would work. The deal that the Kun god made with the drought fiend was to let the drought fiend drink your blood and eat your flesh. Hung Jun nodded. He didn't expect that the phoenix true essence that Chongming left for him would be this potent. He felt that a lot of the toxins were expelled with the loss of his blood. The obstruction to his breathing was also alleviated. The phoenix sacred flame in his chest started to run through his limbs, regenerating his blood. Even so, letting out so much blood all at once made his whole body grew cold. He couldn't help but tremble. Zhao Yun hurriedly looked for a quilt and wrapped it around Hung Jun. The two of them leaned under the corridor, looking at the pale horizon. "Sleep for a while," Zhao Yun said. Hung Jun shook his head and pondered for a long time. Zhao Yun asked worriedly, "What's wrong?" Hung Jun replied, "I'm thinking about the Kun god, Qing Xiang, and the future." "Zhao Yun, am I wrong?" Zhao Yun frowned deeply, staring at Hung Jun with a puzzled expression. Hung Jun had some things that he couldn't say to Li Jinglong, Qiu Yangxi and the rest of his companions at the exorcism department. In front of Zhao Yun, however, he felt that this was someone he could confide to. Therefore, he recounted his conversation with Qing Xiang word for word. Afterwards, he smiled and said, "I don't know why I'm telling you this. I still remember Zhao Zilong telling me that when you left the Devil's Seed, you went to seek refuge at Yaojin Palace." Zhao Yun nodded and said, I have a lot of things that I wanted to say, but I don't know how to say them, but I'm the same as Zhao Zilong. From the beginning, we felt that your majesty was different from other Yao kings. This kind of difference is very important." Zhao Yun said seriously, "It's very, very important. My mouth is too stupid to know what to say." "You are also a great Yao," Hung Jun murmured, then he laughed and said, "If you cultivate for a while, maybe you will become a dragon, too." When Zhao Yun was about to say something, Hung Jun suddenly interjected, "Zhao Yun, promise me." Hung Jun's words immediately made Zhao Yun very nervous. Only for Hung Jun to continue, "Promise me that no matter what happens next, you have to live to protect the sacred land for me." Zhao Yun replied, "Your Majesty. You definitely won't." Hong Jun stopped him from saying anything else. He looked at Zhao Yun's eyes under the bandages and repeated, "No matter whether we run into danger or not, whether we can defeat the Kun god or not. No matter what happen, you have to promise me." Zhao Yun remained silent for a long time, and then finally he nodded. Hong Jun smiled and said, "We will win. I don't know why, but I always have strange confidence in this." Zhao Yun whispered, "I know you don't want to fight Master Qing Xiang." Hung Jun muttered, "There is no other way. Say, do you think you and Kun can predict the final result of this battle?" In fact, after the Battle of Chang'an, the most talked about topic by the entire exorcism department was the power of the Kun god to predict the future. Hung Jun was a little confused by Qiu Yangxi, Li Jinglong, Mo Rijin and the others' statements over this again and again. However, Qing Xiang's words inadvertently inspired him to some extent. The future that the Kun god saw was Hung Jun being interrogated and executed in front of all the Yao tribe while Li Jinglong was preparing another show of Operation Talas again, who then happened to step into a trap set up by Qing Xiang. However, the bait had been secretly replaced by Du Hanqing. Had the Kun god had foreseen all of these, or could it be that the current events were already outside of the Kun god's foresight? "I don't think the Kun god had foreseen you escaping," Zhao Yun said carefully. "Because back in our sacred land, I overhead the Kun god." After Hung Jun left the sacred land with the exorcists, Zhao Yun and the Carpiao each devoured half of the boss snake Neodon. Both their bodies undergone strange changes and their Yao power became much stronger. With this new Yao power, Zhao Yun began to shed its skin. They were hiding in the depths of a forest of stalagmites that day when Qing Xiang and Yuan Kun walked along the river to talk about the Yao races. Many of their discussion involved Hung Jun, Li Jinglong, and the exorcism department. Qing Xiang hid this discussion from the corpse ghost king and Yu Zeyun. Then they prepared the message to be sent to the Drought Fiend, instructing the Drought Fiend to subdue Hung Jun and bring him back to the Central Plains. However, the Khan god got even more ruthless and told the drought fiend to suck Hung Jun's flesh and blood, ending his life in the western regions. That moment, the two Yao kings forgot that Zhao Yun was hibernating in the sacred land. After making that decision, the Khan god used his power to foresee the result of this action. That is to say, Hong Jun murmured, Khan god saw the result. An instant of vision. Zhao Yun explained, Khan god only saw a single vision. I understand. Hung Jun instantly understood the principle behind Khan god's power. He said in a low voice, he must first focus on a certain time and place. I remember. That day, he let me see a certain moment in the future, a scene at a house in Chang'an. Zhao Yun did not know exactly which moment in the future did the Khan god saw after activating his power, but the scene must inevitably shown him the variables that would occur. Therefore, Qing Xiang and Yuan Kun deduced that it was Zhao Yun who leaked the information, and thus, they immediately turned around to search for the whereabouts of Zhao Yun. Zhao Yun was in the middle of molting at that time and almost died in Qing Xiang's hands. The Carpiao, who was a step ahead of Zhao Yun, immediately rescued him and they escaped through the waterway. However, the Khan god was the king of the aquatic Yao and his power was omnipresent under the waters. The Carpiao had no choice but to take him ashore. However, Zhao Yun told the Carpiao to forget about him and to save Hung Jun first. And thus, the scene by the Aral Sea occurred. Khan god have to spend a lot of mana in order to foresee the future. Zhao Yun said. I told the Fox King about my speculations that it was not possible for him to foresee every moment in the future. He could only infer the causes and consequences based on a certain scene that he foresaw. Hong Jun murmured, it is exactly the same as what he said when he cast a spell on me way back in Chang'an that day. I feel that my mind is a lot clearer now. I can bleed myself some more. Come on. Again. Let's wait a little longer, Zhao Yun said worriedly. Hong Jun waved his hand to indicate that it was all right. This would repeat for several times. Every time he recovered a little, he would bleed some more. During this time, Hong Jun continued to contemplate about the Khan god power and repeatedly discussed things with Zhao Yun. He thought that many of his thoughts coincided with Yu Zeyun's questioning of Zhao Yun. Yu Zeyun had even asked for more information and made meticulous assumptions before she came up with the plan to substitute the real Hong Jun with Du Hanking. In the middle of the night, the fox outside gently knocked on the window, and Zhao Yun immediately let Yu Zeyun in. How is it? Yu Zeyun saw Hong Jun's face was pale and became worried. Hong Jun indicated that all were fine. Yu Zeyun spoke again, I have a piece of good news. Your companions have already arrived at the foot of Longmen Mountain. Hong Jun immediately glimpsed a ray of hope. However, in an instant, another thought came to his mind which suppressed his initial impulse. Jinglong didn't know that the one in prison was not me. Hong Jun said. That's right. Yu Zeyun's fox eyes narrowed, as if she was laughing. Hong Jun said, don't tell him that I am here. Yu Zeyun waved her tail and said, would you like to see how he would act first? Hong Jun nodded. Very good. Yu Zeyun sincerely praised him in her heart and replied, tomorrow morning, I'll let Hanking go and speak with your lover first. You're quite smart. In the future, if I heard anyone says His Majesty is stupid, I'll get angry with them. What do you mean? Zhao Yun was puzzled as he turned to Hong Jun, why don't I go and see Li Jinglong, Your Majesty? Hong Jun finally smiled and didn't say anything anymore. He waved his hands to tell Zhao Yun that he didn't need to worry anymore. It wasn't until late at night that the poison gradually cleared from Hong Jun's body. Hong Jun went to sleep first, still turning around in his mind thoughts about Khan God and Li Jinglong. I wonder what Yu Zeyun would say when they meet them. After he woke up, he could feel that his strength was returning. Zhao Yun was in front of the mirror, unfastening the bandages wrapped around her body. You're better. Hong Jun was surprised and delighted. Zhao Yun is no longer her original snake-like appearance. Her appearance had obviously changed. The contours of her eyes have shrunk and became more suitable. Her eyes have turned black and no longer had the narrow slits of a cat's eye. Her body had become more well proportioned. The scales on her hands and feet had also faded. Her bestial feature had been completely removed. She stared blankly at herself in the mirror. Hong Jun stepped forward, and lifted He chain to make her open her mouth slightly. Zhao Yun's tongue licked around her lips. Her red lips and tongue were exact the same as a human's. Hong Jun smiled and said, "It seems that everyone is quite good looking after cultivating their human form. First, it was Yu Zhou and then Zhao Yun. Once they were reborn and cultivated their human form, they were all good looking. This was actually normal for powerful Yao." Zhao Yun's face turned slightly red. She wanted to salute Hong Jun again, but Hong Jun hurriedly waved his hand. At this moment, the corpse ghost king voice came from outside the room, "Your appearance is good. You can be a dream lover for any young men and maidens." Zhao Yun put on her clothes hurriedly. The corpse ghost king first made his salute to Hong Jun. Hong Jun knew that after a night of discussion, he must have made arrangements. Thus, he asked Zhao Yun to stay behind and provide support. Then he left the Luoyang office of the exorcism department together with the corpse ghost king. 2 horses were prepared outside. The corpse ghost king signaled Hong Jun to get on the horse and asked, "How do you feel?" Hong Jun replied, "The poison has been temporarily removed, but I still cannot use spell." The corpse ghost king urged his horse to lead the way and said, "The most important thing in winning a war does not lie in how strong your cultivation is or how strong your magic is. Victory or defeat has long been decided. It is your heart that determines all of this." Hong Jun replied, "It sounds like something Li Jinglong will say. That child knows better than you." The corpse ghost king said, "It is dangerous to fight without spells. Yes, compared to the golden winged giant Peng and Kun god, we are very weak." Hong Jun stared at the corpse ghost king as his cloak fluttered in the snow. At this moment, he suddenly realized that the corpse ghost king and Yu Zhao seemed to be more confident than he thought. And this kind of confidence was faintly similar to Li Jinglong's. "But destiny is on our side," the ghost king continued. It was a very difficult feeling to describe. Even then Hong Jun did realize something. The corpse ghost king was loyal to him, not because he was the rightful successor of Chongming, but because in the unseen world, the Fox King and the Corpse Ghost King's ideals were similar to theirs. And if they were to seriously talk about one's stance, Hong Jun's position have always been indistinguishable. There was only one person who was so persistent, Li Jinglong. In other words, rather than saying that they were supporting him, it was better to say that the Corpse Ghost King and the Fox King acknowledged Li Jinglong, who was behind him. End chapter. Tianbao Fu Yao Lu. Chapter 214. Qinji Chain. "Why are you doing this?" Hong Jun could not help but asked. The corpse ghost king took him to a secluded alley, turned over and dismounted from his horse. Along the way they cleverly avoided all the birds who were either hovering high above the alley or squatting on the broken eaves. Raw meat distracted them from their patrolling while the corpse ghost king rode his horse along the blind spots of the bird surveillance. The corpse ghost king looked back at Hong Jun. "Go in from here." The corpse ghost king motioned for Hong Jun to get into the hole under the wall. Hong Jun with his short body have no issue entering. However, the corpse ghost king was tall and his shoulders got stuck. He could only enter the pass sideways. "Tell me," after getting through the hole, the corpse ghost king looked around and said casually, continued, "Am I a Yao, or a human?" Upon hearing this, Hong Jun suddenly understood and he couldn't help but laugh. As the corpse ghost king continued to scout the area, he said to himself, "How many nights have I dreamed of the past when I was still human? I think Yu Zayun is the same." Hong Jun was being led around by the corpse ghost king in the palace. He asked, "Where are we going?" "Yanking Hall," the corpse ghost king replied, "There are too many birds here. It's not so easy to avoid them." Follow me. Hung Jun said, I've been here before. Thus, it was Hung Jun's turn to lead the way. After entering deep into the Mingtang Palace, Hung Jun recognized the route and as if he was walking in the park, traversed towards the top of the temple. The corpse ghost king immediately said, get down. You will be seen by birds. Hung Jun insisted and beckoned to the corpse ghost king to follow him. The corpse ghost king had no choice but to flip over the roof. Hung Jun then flipped over again, 3 floors in a row. He bowed over the eaves and motioned for the corpse ghost king to look down. By this time, they were in a higher position. The birds were congregated on the roofs of the first and second floors. Hung Jun tiptoed, lurking past the heads of a large group of falcons. The path you choose may not necessarily be smooth, but it is the right one. The corpse ghost king said in a deep voice. Hung Jun turned his head to look at the corpse ghost king and stared at him for a moment. Why? Hung Jun asked softly. Have you ever thought about why when a Yao cultivates, they always cultivate to transform into a human form? The corpse ghost king asked back. When Hung Jun was about to speak, the corpse ghost king patted his shoulder gently and pointed to a high place, where several hovering eagles appeared, and Hung Jun nodded to avoid it. They arrived outside of Deking Yanking Hall. It was a 3-story hall. It was far away from the center of Mingtang Hall and had not been destroyed by the energy released by the Earth's vein. Behind the Yanking Hall was the high platform wherein Lushan used to be and was destroyed by Li Jinglong in the battle while he was possessing the powers of a god. At this moment, the Yao were repairing the high platform. A flock of birds flew back and forth with pieces of white marble. Qing Xiang was standing in the middle of this high platform, mana spread out from his feet, mending the small crack in the platform slowly. Hung Jun and the corpse ghost king landed behind the Yanking Hall. The corpse ghost king held the iron chain of Hung Jun's shackles and bent down to touch the altar. Of all the things in the world, the corpse ghost king said, there are countless flying birds and beasts. Why didn't the Yao race cultivate into powerful tigers or leopard nor fast-flying eagle or falcons, but would rather transform into a human who are weak and clumsy? At this moment, the two leaned on the side of the platform and heard voices coming from above. Because human is the wisest of all being, Hung Jun whispered. Why is human the wisest of all being? The corpse ghost king asked again. Hung Jun couldn't answer this question. Is human really the wisest of all being? The foxes of the beast race were wise and there were many Yao that were more cunning than the human. Was it because human knew how to make sacrifices? This is something that even a mouse can do. Flying birds nurture their children, right and proper. What is the difference between man and Yao? What are we doing here? Hung Jun thought. The corpse ghost king just leaned against the platform, sitting in a hidden place with his legs stretched out. The next moment, the sound of iron chains rang. The meaning was self-evident. In accordance to the plan, Yu Zayun made Du Hanqing questioned Qing Xiang. With Qing Xiang's ability to read mind, wouldn't he know of everything all at once? What's more, Du Hanqing was supposed to attempt to get information out of Qing Xiang. Once Qing Xiang was alerted due to the Qinji chain, the consequences would really be unbearable. What we need to do is to catch them off guard, Yu Zayun's voice whispered near him. Hung Jun suddenly turned his head, and Yu Zayun went to Hung Jun under the cover of a bush, and whispered, I wanted to fish for information but after some time, I realized that you knew the golden winged giant Peng the best, so you need to be present as well. Hong Jun whispered back, but if we fail, Du Hanqing will be in danger. We won't fail. Yu Zayun said, he had seen your lover before. As long as he concentrated on only thinking about Li Jinglong, Qing Xiang wouldn't notice. On the first sign of things failing, we'll run away immediately. Hung Jun tilted his head and looked up from their hiding place under the platform. The corpse ghost king said, this is indeed a risky move. Don't forget that Yuan Kun is also there. Yuan Kun's attention is now on the exorcists, not to mention that his injury has affected his mana. Yu Zayun licked her paw casually and said leisurely, I believe he won't have time to care about what's happening at Qing Xiang's end. From the sound made by the iron chains, Du Hanqing was obviously very weak. He staggered as he climbed up to the platform. It was an expected state of Hung Jun since Qing Xiang was not giving him food or water. Moreover, his mana was supposedly being suppressed by the Qinji chain. This was already the 5th day of his capture. Du Hanqing have to use this opportunity to get information from Qing Xiang on how to unlock the Qinji chain shackling Hung Jun. Qing Xiang stood at the middle of the platform and gave a meaningful glance at Hong Jun. Du Hanqing had disheveled hair and he raised his head slightly to look at Qing Xiang. This is too difficult. Hung Jun frowned as he whispered. It is extremely difficult to pretend to be someone else in front of Qing Xiang and avoid being found out with his mind-reading ability, let alone getting information out of him. It's not that difficult. Yu Zeyun said. People's hearts can also be disguised. There would always be someone stronger than you. In this world, there would definitely be those who could contend with him. Just like your lover and your brother, both of them are natural enemies of him. Hong Jun. From this sentence, he could speculate that Yu Zeyun have reached some kind of agreement with Li Jinglong and Qiu Yangxi last night. I'm telling you, the Hung Jun in front of the platform stared at Qing Xiang and spoke plainly, let Li Jinglong go. You're telling me? Qing Xiang laughed instead, and walked towards Du Hanqing. At that moment, Hung Jun who was under the platform felt his heart lunged. Du Hanqing's pretense was almost seamless. When he glanced at Qing Xiang sideways, his eyes looked like Hung Jun. What are you going to sacrifice in return? Qing Xiang said with a sad look in his eyes, that year, you told me that, as long as Shuang and Jiayus can survive, you can do anything. Du Hanqing's eyes showed a moment of astonishment, while Qing Xiang looked at him as if he was looking at a statue. Do you like that human so much? Qing Xiang said in a low voice, I can't read the slightest bit of guilt, remorse, or feelings of protection towards the Yao race in your heart. Right now, there's only that detestable human in your mind. Immediately afterwards, Qing Xiang slapped Hung Jun hard in the face, which knocked Du Hanqing to the ground. Hung Jun was already so weak that he fell and convulsed on his side. He even bled from the corners of his mouth. When that slap hit Du Hanqing, Hung Jun who was hidden under the platform felt as if that slap hit his soul. Du Hanqing struggled to get up from the floor, but his limbs had no strength to support his body. The Qinjin chain hit against the floor of the platform, making rattling noises. He turned his head with great difficulty to look at Qing Xiang. It can't be unlocked. Qing Xiang said slowly, don't bother thinking about it. Once the Qinji chain was fastened, it can't be unlocked anymore. Hung Jun was shocked. At this moment, he could practically guess what was going through Du Hanqing's mind. If he could get free of these shackles, he would use the last bit of his strength to take Qing Xiang down with him. Du Hanqing stammered, I. Qing Xiang turned around and walked to the center of the platform. He spoke, in the past, Dai Pankaro locked me up with this chain for 500 years. The only person in the world who can break it happened to be here. Du Hanqing's face was pale and his eyes were empty. He just lay on the floor quietly. That's right. Qing Xiang murmured, it's you, Hung Jun. Li Jinglong can't unlock this because the Qinji chain does not respond to the power of the heart lamp. Hung Jun. Yu Zeyun's expression was solemn, and the corpse ghost king's frowned. He raised his hand and put it down slowly. He was intending to press down on Hung Jun's shoulder. Hung Jun's main concern was about to be answered. He listened attentively to the conversation above the platform. At this moment, behind Yanking Hall, two figures turned around. They were Atai and Li Jinglong. The only magic weapon in the world that can unlock this Qinji chain is the one passed down by Kongxian. It was the combination of your pentacolor sacred knives that was handed over to you. Qing Xiang said, the pentacolor sacred knives can only be controlled by its rightful owner, but without mana, it couldn't be used. In other words, The only one who could break the Qinji chain was only you, Hung Jun, but since you're shackled with the Qinji chain, you have lost all your mana. Du Hanqing couldn't help but trembled as he raised his head. Qing Xiang murmured, therefore, since you were shackled with this, it can never be unlocked. Du Hanqing said with a trembling voice, from the very beginning, you. Qing Xiang murmured, it's too late for regrets, my little nephew. Below the platform, tears slowly flowed from the corners of Hung Jun's eyes. The corpse ghost king hand was still hanging mid-air, but it never came down to press on Hung Jun's shoulder. Take him away, Qing Xiang finally said in the end. His subordinates started to move forward, but this moment, the Khan god in his black robes appeared below the platform. Yu Zheajun and the corpse ghost king was both startled. Hong Jun turned his head immediately. However, the Khan god who was within 20 steps of them just walked past the three of them and went up to the platform. Oh, Yu Zheajun murmured. What is he doing here? Hong Jun asked in disbelief. Yuan Kun's purpose was very clear. As soon as he stood on the platform, he raised his hand and pointed to the east. Without saying a word, he turned and faced the west. Soon afterwards, Qing Xiang suddenly turned his head. Under the altar, Hung Jun followed Yuan Kun's gaze and saw Li Jinglong standing on the eaves of the Yanking Hall. At that moment, Li Jinglong had already drawn his long bow. The bow shone with a golden light. The next moment, Qing Xiang turned around and instantly soared to the sky. 8 eye sleeves fluttered as a golden light was released. At that moment, the exorcists appeared in 4 directions all at the same time. Qi Yangxi yelled as he shook the Yao subduing staff, which expanded as wide as the sky and fiercely smashed it down to the ground. As soon as Yuan Kun turned around, he whistles with his 2 fingers between his lips. At the same time, Qing Xiang spread his wings and turned into his huge golden winged giant Peng's form and rushed towards Yanking Palace. The hall collapsed in an earth-shattering manner. Avian creatures rushed from all directions. Immediately, the Yao form of Yu Zhou appeared in the sky. He rushed towards the platform, trying to save Hung Jun. Hung Jun was about to rush out, but the corpse ghost king pressed down on his shoulder. The hand that fell on his shoulder was as heavy as Mount Tai. Hung Jun couldn't move. The corpse ghost king said, calm down. Yu Zheajun said, hurry and find your pentacolor sacred knives. Yu Zheajun led the way. Hung Jun turned his head and saw that the Yanking Hall had been completely destroyed by Qing Xiang. A storm rolled around the platform as avian creatures overwhelming covered the sky while Yuan Kun was still standing in front of it. Li Jinglong, Qiu Yangxi, Mo Rijin and Atai all used the artifacts of Akalanatha in their hands. The golden-winged giant Peng was very wary of these artifacts and didn't dare to face them head-on. Yuan Kun said in a low voice, destroy the building. The golden-winged giant Peng flew high to the sky. Li Jinglong released the golden arrow while Du Hanqing let out a heart-wrenching cry, Jinglong, go. Yu Zheajun laughed. Hong Jun asked anxiously, how can you laugh at a time like this? I'm sorry I couldn't hold it back, Yu Zheajun said. The corpse ghost king asked, where are the pentacolor sacred knives? Yu Zheajun answered blankly, I don't know. Hong Jun and the 2 Yao kings fled to the promenade and looked into the distance. The area surrounding the platform had become a battlefield of storms. The corpse ghost king said, we must find your pentacolor sacred knife first. Suddenly, an idea came to Hung Jun. I don't know exactly where it was hidden, but I can guess who was keeping it. Please don't let anything happen to Li Jinglong, Hung Jun secretly prayed in his heart. The earth shook as the entire Yanking Hall collapsed completely. The wings of the golden-winged giant Peng swept up a hurricane, sweeping up broken bricks and shattered tiles, and rushed towards the exorcists. Lu Su and Yu Zhou flew into the air several times, but they were being forced back by the avian creatures in the air. Lu Su shouted, there's too many of them. We can't get close. Yu Zhou shouted to Du Hanqing, Hung Jun. Hung Jun was kneeling on the platform. He shook his head as he gasped at them. Obviously, even he didn't expect that Li Jinglong and the others would really come to rescue him. He wasn't sure what to do at this point. Yuan Kun, who was covered in a black cloth, quietly listened to the movements around him. The four exorcists took turns in attacking Qing Xiang, but Qing Xiang's goal was very clear. He went straight for Li Jinglong. The storm of bricks and tiles swept away, blocking the golden light and the torrential rain released by the golden arrow. The flying dust blocked Qiu Yangxi's line of sight. Qiu Yangxi shook the Yao subduing staff several times, but he couldn't find Qing Xiang. Then, the promenade where Qiu Yangxi stood was overturned, throwing him off the promenade. The place where Mo Rijin and Atai were standing collapsed one after another. Qing Xiang shouted angrily, "You came at the right time." Li Jinglong fired a round of scattered arrows to clear the debris in front of him. He landed in an empty space and fell straight down. However, he was unexpectedly calm. He stepped on a huge beam, rolled in the air and jumped forward without regards for his own safety. Between the light and stone fire, Li Jinglong approached Qing Xiang. The golden-winged giant Peng emerged from the chaotic storm, his sharp claws were posed to cut Li Jinglong open. Li Jinglong switched the bow to his left hand and held the golden arrow horizontally in his right hand, using it to defend against the golden-winged giant Peng's claw. The golden-winged giant Peng roared in pain and shook Li Jinglong away along with his magical artifact. Li Jinglong was suddenly thrown out from the hurricane and fell out like a kite with a broken string. End chapter. Tianbao Fu Yao Lu. Chapter 215. Blue Flame Burning Yao. At the same time, Hung Jun led the Corpse Ghost King and Yu Zayun through the corridors towards the ruins of the Mingtang Hall. Hung Jun stopped and asked Yu Zayun, "Can you find the whereabouts of the Drought Fiend?" Yu Zayun said, "Follow me." Yu Zayun led the way and left the corridors with Hung Jun. They arrived in front of the ruins of the Mingtang Hall. After going around the ruins, there was a huge square patio with a tunnel leading underground. Hong Jun remembered that Mo Rijin and Lu Su had visited this place before the fall of Luoyang. There was an entrance to the underground of the Mingtang main hall. Just around here. Yu Zayun sniffed her nose and said, "It's his corpse miasma." "How can you tell?" The Corpse Ghost King was very surprised. "Your corpse miasma is different from his corpse miasma." Yu Zayun looked around and asked, "Are you suspecting that he was the one keeping your weapons?" A loud sound came from a distance. Apparently another building was destroyed by Qing Xiang. The Corpse Ghost King said, "The battle is too intense. He must have been lured away. How troublesome." Hung Jun said, "I don't think he will be carrying them with him. Let's go down and check it out." Hung Jun dragged the Kinji chain and stumbled underground. Sure enough, the earth vein that they used to counter An Lushan was still there. In the center of the Mingtang main hall, there was the array spell that they used to invoke the power of Akalanatha. In the center of the formation, there were the 4 pentacolor sacred knives, and in the middle of the knives was a jade peacock plume. "Found it?" Hung Jun said. Perhaps it was intuition, but the feeling was hazy, so he wasn't very sure. However, he wanted to take the chance, and they were really here. Hung Jun wanted to go forward and take his weapons, but the formation emitted a bright light and forced him away. Blue flames surged from the floor of the Mingtang main hall. The Corpse Ghost King had sharp eyes and acted fast. He dragged Hung Jun from behind. "You will be burned to death," Yu Zayun said. Hung Jun remembered that every time they acquired an artifact of Akalanatha, the energy of the earth vein array formation would form a strong protective barrier which saved the life of the rightful wielder of the artifact. However, if it was taken wrongly, it would be like what happened with Yu Zhou, who was almost burned to death. "We have to lead the power away," Hung Jun said. "Don't move," the Corpse Ghost King replied, "let me try it." Yu Zayun looked toward the exit. She was clearly a bit worried. "Can you really do it, Ghost King?" The Corpse Ghost King didn't answer and instead walked to the earth vein array, which was designed by Yuan Kun. Back in the temple of 10,000 Yao when Yuan Kun said to suppress you, Hung Jun knew that he had something to do with this earth vein spell formation. Although he didn't know the details, since the pentacolor sacred knives were used, the setup array must be very comprehensive. Be careful, Hung Jun reminded anxiously. He lowered his head and looked down at the kanji chain at his feet and felt incredibly irritated. He felt so trapped that he could do nothing. The moment the corpse ghost king walked into the spell formation, there was a loud bang. Blue flame immediately spun and enveloped his entire body. Immediately afterwards, the corpse ghost king let out a mighty roar and emitted Yao energy in an attempt to resist the power of the earth vein. Yu Zeyun called out, "Ghost King." Yu Zeyun flew up and transformed into her human form in the air. Her human form was still using the appearance of Yang Yahuan. Hung Jun said, "Be careful, you too." Hung Jun could only watch from the side anxiously as Yu Zeyun also stepped into the spell formation. 9 tails appeared behind her and immediately drew away a large amount of the blue flames from the earth veins. The corpse ghost king declared, "This is a trap." Hung Jun immediately said, "Don't take it. Let's get out of there." The flames surged into a storm and wreaked havoc in the underground space. However, the corpse ghost king and Yu Zeyun found that they could not get out of the spell formation. Hung Jun wanted to rush forward to help them, but the spell formation prevented him from doing so. Yu Zeyun said, "Go find a chance. Corpse ghost king, you can do it. Take the pentacolor sacred knives at least, forget about the jade peacock plume." Yu Zeyun was also struggling to hold on. For a moment, the earth vein spell formation was like a whirlpool. The 2 Yao clan leaders could not get close to the eye of the formation, nor could they escape. Hung Jun suddenly felt a dangerous aura behind him and immediately turned around. The drought fiend bowed and walked down from outside of the tunnel, muttering, "How come there is another one here?" He seemed to have realized that the Hung Jun on the platform was a fake. Moreover, he was very surprised at the scene he found in this underground space. Hung Jun held his breath as he felt a chill ran down his spine. The corpse ghost king and Yu Zeyun was trapped in the spell formation. The earth vein's energy covered from above to below while the drought fiend slowly walked towards him. "Serves you right," the drought fiend muttered, "you bunch of traitors." The drought fiend seemed to be a little absent-minded. At this moment, if Hung Jun had feathers, all of his hairs would be standing on end. He was extremely anxious as he stared at the drought fiend. For a moment, the spell formation was silent. The blue flames powered by the earth vein engulfed the corpse ghost king and Yu Zeyun. The drought fiend ignored the 2 Yao clan leaders in the spell formation and instead continued to walk towards Hung Jun. The drought fiend obviously couldn't figure out how Hung Jun managed to escape from the prison. His gaze moved from Hung Jun's face, down to his shackles. Hung Jun stepped back, but with the earth vein formation's flames behind him, there was no way for him to escape. "You are a powerful Yao," Hung Jun said slowly, "and an old friend of the corpse ghost king. It's not yet late to go back." The drought fiend immediately laughed uproariously as Hung Jun looked at the drought fiend calmly. "With your current state," the drought fiend coldly said, "what exactly can you do?" Hung Jun slowly gasped for breath. The drought fiend said in a hoarse and gloomy voice, "If you humans did not betray me back then, how would I have ended like this today?" When Hung Jun heard the word "you humans," his heart could not help but beat violently. "You were once a human, too," Hung Jun said in a trembling voice. Humanity's deceit and capacity for violence was so much worse than the most vicious Mara in this world. The drought fiend shouted madly. "You should have died a long time ago. Coward! Traitor! Bastard of the Yao clan!" Hung Jun could hardly control his trembling from fear. He observed the situation around him while keeping a constant guard against a sudden attack from the drought fiend. At this moment, he could not count on any external assistance, nor did he have mana. He was definitely not a match against the drought fiend at this time. The drought fiend was also very clear that with one move, he could snatch Hung Jun by the neck and drag him to Qing Xiang. At this moment, the drought fiend was arrogantly regarding Hung Jun as nothing but a mere ant. After letting out a roar, he made a familiar move. He raised his left hand and was posed to grab Hung Jun with lightning speed. In that split second, the corner of Hung Jun's mouth twitched slightly without battling an eyelid. When the drought fiend flicked his arms, Hung Jun suddenly somersaulted backwards as soon as the drought fiend arrived in front of him like a shadow. This was the third time that Hung Jun faced this move. He was already prepared to counter this trick. He immediately used the momentum of his somersault to kick out the Qinji chain. The drought fiend never expected that Hung Jun's trembling from fear was just a trick to make him underestimate the opponent in front of him. The moment that the Qinji chain was thrown out, the drought fiend instantly realized that Hung Jun was not as helpless as he appeared to be. Just as he was about to pull back, it was already too late. He ended up pouncing on empty air. Hung Jun used the momentum of his kick to swing the chain around his ankle and wrap the chain around the drought fiend's tall body. Hung Jun turned around to pin him from the back. The drought fiend let out a long hiss. Hung Jun said in a low voice, "You didn't expect this, did you?" Immediately after, he swung the Qinji chain in his hand and wrapped the chain around the drought fiend's neck. The drought fiend tried to throw Hung Jun off his back, but he was entangled with the Qinji chain. The chain immediately emitted a strong light and tightly bound him. The drought fiend roared angrily, "You!" Hung Jun soared into the air. He was waiting for this moment. He immediately kicked the drought fiend on the back. The drought fiend revealed a ferocious but fearful expression as he crashed into the earth vein spell formation. Hung Jun's ankle was still shackled with the Qinji chain while the other end of the chain was tied around the drought fiend's neck. After he was firmly kicked into the earth vein spell formation, the array exploded and burned the drought fiend's entire body. A third great Yao collided with the spell formation and the array immediately launched a counter-attack. The drought fiend tried to use his full strength to resist it, triggering a storm of blue flames. The drought fiend turned around and was about to leave the spell formation when a low voice came from behind him. "I'm sorry, Senior." The corpse ghost king instantly appeared from behind the drought fiend. With a sweep of an arm, he grabbed the drought fiend and threw him to the ground. With a loud bang, Hung Jun was almost dragged into the earth vein spell formation by the chain. Fortunately, he managed to stabilize his body at the last moment. The drought fiend let out a wild cry and roared, You! You!" The corpse ghost king held down the drought fiend with one hand. The drought fiend finally realized that by underestimating his opponent, he was about to lose his life. He immediately tried to struggle even more fiercely. The power of the earth vein spell formation rushed towards the drought fiend and poured into his body. Seeing that the pressure by the array was gradually lightening, Hung Jun knelt on one knee and dragged the chain on his foot. He then, and shouted, "Fox King! Quick!" All the energy of the earth veins in the array rushed towards the drought fiend, which almost depleted the defensive power of the array. In the blink of an eye, Yu Zayun rushed towards the middle of the earth vein spell formation and snatched away the pentacolor sacred knives and the jade peacock plume. The drought fiend's howls of agony grew weaker and weaker. Within the raging flames, his entire body emitted a blue light. His huge corpse body was like a charcoal that was being burned and was disintegrating rapidly. Normally, he wouldn't be scared of the corpse ghost king. However, with the Qinji chain wrapped around his neck, his mana was suppressed. The flames of the earth vein spell formation were also widely burning around his body, causing his Yao energy to continuously dissipate. An ancient powerful Yao was actually weakening within the spell array. The corpse ghost king firmly pressed down on the drought fiend's chest, refusing to let him go no matter what. His clothes gradually burned, revealing his body. His chest muscles, shoulders, and back were beginning to gradually break down. The right arm that was pressing down on the drought fiend was in the most serious condition. "Ghost King!" Yu Zayun shouted. Hung Jun pulled the chain violently and shouted, "Ghost King! Hurry and come out!" No matter how much the drought fiends struggled, the corpse ghost king remained immovable as a mountain. The drought fiend's howls of agony gradually turned into begging for mercy as he moaned, "Let me go." The ghost king remained unmoved. Yu Zeyun took away the magical weapons. The earth vein spell formation's flame grew stronger and stronger. It was like a huge furnace, smelting the two ancient undead kings. The drought fiend said weakly, "You actually want to kill me for this half-human half-Yao bastard? Pledging allegiance to him is your best choice." The corpse ghost king said in a deep voice, "I'm giving you this opportunity." Hung Jun fiercely pulled on the earth vein spell formation from the outside, shouting, "Ghost king! Let him go. I'd rather that you live." The corpse ghost king didn't move at all. In the next moment, the flames of the earth vein spell formation surged, covering the space below and above it, instantly engulfing the corpse ghost king and the drought fiend. Hung Jun let out a frantic shout. Just as he was about to rush in to save them, Yu Zeyun suddenly transformed into her human form and grabbed Hung Jun from behind. Immediately afterwards, the earth vein spell formation suddenly erupted, sweeping out in all directions. Hong Jun and Yu Zeyun were knocked away together as the Kinji chain flew out. Its other end was no longer tied to anything. The raging flame suddenly shrank toward the core of the earth vein spell formation. The corpse ghost king, who was kneeling on one knee in front of the drought fiend's chest, slowly stood up. He reached out his left hand and caught a flashing red inner core. He turned around and walked out of the earth vein spell formation. With flames still chasing around him, Hung Jun leaned back, his eyes were filled with shock and tears. He saw that the lower half of the corpse ghost king's body was badly damaged and the muscles in his body were burnt black. His tall body leaned forward toward Hong Jun and slowly knelt on one knee. He stretched out his left hand. In his hand was the flashing neodon of the drought fiend. On the other side, the front of the Yanking Palace had been destroyed. All the exorcists attacked together, but they couldn't do anything to the golden-winged giant Peng. In the fierce wind, the white deer flew over. Yuan Kun took an ice knife and shot it out. Yu Zhou shouted, "Lu Su, look out." Yu Zhou flew over and knocked the white deer out of the way. The Kun god once again formed thousands of ice blade which disappeared into the hurricane. In an instant, the hurricane turned into a huge killing array filled with blades. Yuan Kun shouted, "Kill them here." Li Jinglong shouted, "We can't save him. Retreat." Li Jinglong glanced towards Hung Jun in the distance. At the platform, Hung Jun was still kneeling, his eyes fixed at Li Jinglong. The shouts and the sound of the fierce wind gradually faded away. It was as if the world had gone silent. Li Jinglong held a longbow in his hand and couldn't help but tremble as he looked at Hung Jun. At that moment, he didn't know where it came from, but he felt a burst of strong will and he yelled, "Hung Jun dash!" Immediately afterwards, Li Jinglong faced the blades that were wreaking havoc in the sky and rushed towards the platform. Yuan Kun was waiting for this moment. He immediately turned around and took off his blindfold, his black robes fluttered in the wind. The injury in his left eye hadn't healed yet and it was still bleeding. He said in a deep voice, "Li Jinglong, you've lost." In an instant, the entire platform surged with a powerful energy. The array on the ground flashed and its energy gathered on Yuan Kun's body. In his other eye, a splendid galaxy burst out. Time stood still in an instant. Bricks and broken wood were flying in the sky. The trees on the ground were tilted by the hurricane. The white deer raised its head and was about to turn around. Morrigan was shooting an arrow into the sky. Even the detail of the golden-winged giant Peng in the middle of flapping its wings could be clearly seen. Countless sharp blades which were frozen in place, turned around and flew towards Li Jinglong. With Li Jinglong's body frozen in place, thousands of blades were about to pierce his body, but in the next moment, a chain flew from the side and wrapped around Li Jinglong's waist, dragging him out of the range of the blades. Li Jinglong only saw a blur in front of his eyes as his whole body flew backwards rapidly. Thousands of blades poured down like a torrential downpour. The ground was covered in flying ash and the area around the platform became flooded. Go! Morrigan shouted. Morrigan shot a few arrows at the sky, making the golden-winged giant Peng pulled up and flew away. The hurricane stopped in that moment and the exorcists rushed over to snatch Li Jinglong away. Then everyone retreated in a flash. Yuan Kun staggered and gasped for breath as black blood dripped down from his eyes. Qing Xiang landed on the ground with an ashen expression. He was extremely angry as he swept Hung Jun to the side with a slap. Take him down and lock him up. Qing Xiang said in a low voice. Where's the drought fiend? Call the drought fiend over. End chapter.